Since then, he'd scavenged spare parts and sketched out the plans for what he hoped would show Simony that he was more than someone who happened to be good at fixing bicycles and greasing playground equipment and roller skate bearings. He shimmied up the chain to where he'd rigged a complicated series of pulleys, cables, and a metal lever that engaged the contraption. Holding a screwdriver between his teeth, he hooked a spring to one end of the lever. He took the screwdriver from his mouth and used it as a pry bar to stretch the spring until his arm began to shake. Then he looped the spring around a metal hoop that had once been part of a water pump, and the whole thing snapped into place. "Look," said a voice that was all too familiar. Angus. "The grease monkey made a toy so he won't have to play in the coal pits anymore." Trenton hadn't invited him to the lot outside the power conversion station, but the boy with the perfect hair and big biceps followed Simony everywhere like a puppy. Making coal jokes was one of Angus's favorite taunts, partly because Trenton's last name was Colman, and partly because Trenton's father worked in the mines. Trenton tied a rope around the end of the lever, yanked it tight, and slid down to a leather seat hanging between the two chains. From there it was a drop of only 6 or 7 feet to the ground. Still, he had to make the jump carefully, because the seat spun at the same rate as the gear it was connected to. He hit the ground, rolled on one shoulder, and leaped to his feet. He might not have been as big or as strong as most of the other boys his age, but he was nimble. Folding his arms across his chest, he looked up at his finished work with pride. With one chain attached to the inside of the gear and the other to the outside, the seat swung gracefully overhead, powered by the rumbling equipment of the station. The rope hung in easy reach, trailing around and around like the tail of a circling beast. "What's it supposed to be?" asked a second grader who'd tagged along with his older brother. Trenton, who was about to graduate from 8th grade and start vocational training, patted the kid on the head. "I'm glad you asked." He yanked on the rope as the swing passed by, and the pulley on the outside moved toward the center, the two chains drawing together until the seat was only a couple of feet above the ground. "This is going to be the most fun any kid has ever had." He looked at the red-headed girl out of the corner of his eye. "I call it the Simony swing." "You named it after me?" Simony asked, watching wide-eyed as the swing circled around and around. This was exactly how Trenton had planned it, except for the part about Angus being there. He held out a hand. "Do you want to be the first to try it?" She looked up at the pulleys and springs. "Is it safe?" "Safer than riding the trolley to City Center." Trenton had done the calculations over and over, making sure everything would work perfectly. Of course, it might have been better to try the swing for the first time with no one around, but he'd been too excited to show off his work for that. "You're not really going to get on that Invention, are you?" Angus asked Simony. Trenton couldn't believe what he heard. He spun around to face the bigger boy. "What did you call my swing?" "Exactly what it is," Angus sneered. "An invention. And you're an inventor." Several of the smaller children gasped at the curse word, and part of the group moved away, as if even standing close might associate them with something which could land them in serious trouble. Trenton balled his fists. "Take it back, or I'll—" "You'll what?" Angus stepped forward and stared down at Trenton. "You going to hit me? You want to be guilty of violence and inventing all in one